Next time you hear a politico talk about the women's vote, stop them right there. Women are not a homogeneous demographic. Just as the age range of over 60 can contain anyone from Henry Kissinger to Desmond Tutu, the group women can house anyone from Margaret Thatcher to Chelsea Manning to me. The media representation of women in politics, it seems, has a lot to catch up on. Whether it's a feature on Spike.com about the top 10 sexiest female politicians in the world, or why, according to Australian news site news.com.au, Italian female politicians are so beautiful, and why, according to the Daily Mail, British ones aren't. Do we live in a world where the representation of women is still slathered with misogyny, despite what can statistically be seen as progress? In 1995, 20 years ago, representatives from 189 countries came up with a plan for women's empowerment and equality and opportunity. The Beijing Platform for Action. Let's see what's happened since then. Sub-Saharan Africa has achieved some of the most dramatic female breakthroughs in the past 20 years. The Guardian reports that the number of female MPs has risen from 9.8% in 1995 to 22.3% in 2015. In the Americas, North and South, there has been a gradual rise from 12.7% in 1995 to 26.4% in 2015. But the US lags behind most other democracies, ranking just 28th out of 34 OECD countries, as the Huffington Post reported. No surprise given that just 10 years after the Beijing Platform for Action was founded, the US refused to support a reaffirming statement unless it was amended to say that it did not create any new human rights or offer the right to abortion. The Guardian reported it as Bush's America waging a global battle against women's rights. In Europe, the rise in female parliamentarians has also been steady, from 13.2% in 1995 to 25% in 2015. In the run-up to the UK elections this past May, 3 of the 7 party leaders participating in TV debates were women. The Scottish National Party's Nicola Sturgeon, the Green Party's Natalie Bennett, and Plaid Cymru's Leanne Wood. Policy-wise, their presence highlighted the Labour Party's triangulation to the right. The 3 agreed on plenty, like scrapping the Trident nuclear defence, opposing privatisation of the National Health Service, and an end to austerity, as shown by this BBC article. An image of the 3 leaders hugging after the BBC's debates went viral. It prompted somewhat belittling headlines, like this article in The Telegraph stating that the leaders' debate hug that showed Britain wants a new cuddlier politics. But the message from the 3 leaders was clear. Here is a progressive alliance of party leaders who just happen to be women, and not pale, male, and stale. Despite Piers Morgan in the Daily Mail calling Nicola Sturgeon the most dangerous wee woman in the world, people in Scotland seem to disagree. The SNP, with its new female leader at the helm, wiped the board in the election and won 56 out of 59 seats. The Independent called it an electoral tsunami. But before we pat ourselves on the back over how progressive we are, let's remember it's hard smashing glass ceilings when the world wants you to try on glass slippers. Despite women gaining suffrage and the right to vote in Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates over the past 20 years, these gains have not been reflected in political representation. Is it because the world's global language still holds on to the notion that women should be seen and not heard? Since Nancy Astor's election to the British Parliament in 1919, there have been a total of 370 women elected to the House of Commons. There's been a gradual increase in representation, and now about a quarter of the House of Commons is female. But as The Guardian's John Crace wrote in his Insider's Guide to Westminster, for women, Westminster can be an alien world. Sexism is so everyday and institutionalized, most MPs fail to even realize its existence. Even now, some MPs cup their hands across their chest and jig them up and down, off camera of course, when a woman gets up to speak. No talk of women in power can be had without mentioning Margaret Thatcher. Elected Prime Minister in 1979, her legacy was less about the empowerment of women than it was about showing us what universal suffrage actually meant. Just because a woman is in high office doesn't, by default, make her a liberal. Like her earlier Israeli counterpart Golda Meir, the Thatcher government is considered by some to be one of the most brutal and conservative years in recent history. media treatments of both Mayir and Thatcher attempt to desexualize them, as well as place them in a position far from the reaches of a woman's stereotypical place in the public eye. Their modern counterpart, Angela Merkel, has to deal with commentators like these at Der Spiegel, calling her a black widow. She has people poke fun at her Hausfrau fashion sense, despite having got Germany through Europe-wide recessions and depressions pretty scot-free. Previous to all of them is India's late Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi. She went to war with Pakistan in 1971 and took India into the nuclear age with weapons tests in 1974. She nationalized the banks and liberalized the economics, not really a good thing, took India to war against Pakistan, and is associated with years of conflict in the Punjab. She was India's second longest-serving leader, yet Richard Nixon still called her an old witch. She was called the only man in her cabinet and was compared to a dumb doll, as the BBC reported. The message is this: you cannot be that powerful as a woman unless we see you acting like a man. As a woman, you're either a witch or a wife. Let's take that old question of what is she wearing and give it a spin. It isn't just the conservative gaze that's guilty of this sort of objectification. The Guardian, Britain's allegedly progressive organ, recently framed Hillary Clinton as presidential hopeful and poster child for pantsuits in their article, The Clinton Look, Power Hair, Pantsuits and Practicality. 2006's Scrunchiegate, where a particular hair accessory sported by Clinton caused column inches to stir when a heckler yelled, "Iron my shirt," during a speech at her last presidential bid, shown here in the Huffington Post. CNN's Glenn Beck called her the stereotypical bitch. Media Matters reported that author Mark Rudolph said, "When Barack Obama speaks, men here, take off for the future. When Hillary Clinton speaks, men here, take out the garbage." But there's more to Hillary than her pantsuits. Political magazine Jacobin, who enjoy calling out neoliberals in public office, said that Hillary Clinton isn't a champion of women's rights. She's the embodiment of corporate feminism. They then suggest that Hillary Clinton is a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that feminist enthusiasm of Hillary Clinton is reflective of a profound crisis of US liberal feminism, which has long embraced or accepted capitalism, racism, empire, and even heterosexism and transphobia. They comprehensively link her time on the board of Walmart while they waged a major campaign against labor unions and her well-documented willingness to use military power overseas. So what we have here is a presidential hopeful whose trigger-happy nature will be hidden in a haze of hairspray and manicures. The message here is no matter what you accomplish or are able to do, as a woman, you will have to deal with a disproportionate amount of wardrobe scrutiny and chauvinism from a press mostly populated by men in very bad supermarket suits. And if you want to carpet bomb Tehran, you can probably get away with it because editors will be wondering why you wore turquoise instead of navy when you made the announcement. The hate doesn't always have to come from bellicose white dudes with entitlement issues. Hillary's recent presidential bid saw Texan Cheryl Rios, herself a CEO of a marketing agency, say that she doesn't think women should be allowed to run a country because hormones and biblical reasoning, as Huffington Post reports here. This is an argument that then saw a Fox News presenter chime in to criticize her on live television. Let's make this clear. If you have Fox News calling you sexist, you have a problem. Successful women in power have not changed the dominant patriarchal coverage of the media. Magazines and newspapers are perpetually obsessed with the sheer hotness of politicians, current and former. Mara Carfagna of Berlusconi's cabinet is one. A self-confessed anti-feminist and opponent of gay marriage, she thinks that homophobia is no longer a problem in Italy because it's a thinking offence. But that's okay, because she's a former topless model, as everyone from the Telegraph to the Daily Mail insist on telling us. Francis Ségolène Royal, the environment minister who once said that there is a strong correlation between the status of a woman and the state of justice or injustice in a country, was papped on a beach in a turquoise bikini with her then-partner François Hollande, in the midst of her bid to become president. Or French housing minister Cécile Duflot, who, in 2012, deigned to wear a dress to speak at France's National Assembly and received wolf whistles from her male colleagues. One of her colleagues said he was merely admiring her, and another said the whistling was in tribute to her. The incident was globally reported from The Telegraph to Russia Today to Slate magazine. Sadly, her dress received more column inches than the Paris-wide architecture project she was going to talk about. You can posit that images of women and femininity threaten a patriarchal order reflected in the media. The recent censoring of Pablo Picasso's Women of Algiers painting by a Fox News affiliate on television, where they hazed out 2 images of breasts, attests to this. Now let's go a bit meta here. I've written and presented this segment on women, power, politics, and perception. Do you think I'd have the same authority if I were talking about architecture or football? Do you think it's because I'm a woman?